Hello there, and welcome back to Chatty TV Junkie. I'm your TV Junkie, Wendy, and if you have already subscribed to this channel, thank you very much. If you haven't done yet, just hit that subscribe button below and hit the bell notification so you know when I upload. Today, we're going to talk about Rachel Goes Rogue and the brand new episode of Vanderpump Rules that dropped tonight. I just finished watching it along with What Happens Live with Andy Cohen, and Lala was on it. So we're going to talk all about it. And first off, so Rachel Goes Rogue. If you guys haven't watched it, it's, my ring's gunning in the way, but I watched mine on Spotify. I'm not really sure if there's any sort of schedule yet of when they upload, because there was chapter 3 was uploaded on the 23rd, which was Tuesday. Then they did number 4 on Friday. And then yesterday, they did chapter 5. The only one that didn't have anything to do with the show was number 4. They talked about why Rachel sometimes laughs when she's nervous or anxious, and they had a therapist on for that. And I had mentioned that that's not what I was expecting, and then all of a sudden they released, not that I had anything to do with it, I'm sure other people thought it too, but all of a sudden they had another episode going back to talking about the Scandoval. And they do have the iHeartRadio producers interviewing her, and then she talks the answer out. So she doesn't run the podcast by herself. She's being asked questions by the producers. So anyway, they started off tonight's episode. I'm going to intertwine the two because they sort of intertwine. I'm going to put this over here. So what happened on the podcast is they were asking her about the time that she was in Las Vegas and got into that big fight with the girls, and she really wanted to leave. She didn't feel comfortable. She was super hungover. She claims that the producers didn't want her to leave. And she's like, listen, I want to leave. I'm exhausted. I don't feel like being here. I feel uncomfortable. I just want to go back to LA. And they said, okay, well, fine. We'll let you go back to LA, but we want you to stand up for yourself. You know, you need to stand up for yourself, and Lala's been on your case, so you should say something back to her. So she's like, fine, I'll say something. She didn't want to. And that's why what came out of her mouth at that dinner, when she said something to Lala about, I wouldn't let my man around you, and then it really sent Lala off the edge. And after she did what the producers wanted to do, they let her go back to LA, but they're like, wait, you can go back to LA, but before you go home, we want you to show up at this guy's meetup that they knew Sandoval was going to be at. Then she claims that they told Sandoval that she was on her way. It wasn't a surprise for him, but he put on his acting, according to Rachel, and he was like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy to see you. And then from there, she was like, oh, it's so nice that he really cares about me and he really wants to hear what I say, and no one wants to really hear what I say at that time, not knowing what was happening behind the scenes. Now, whether or not this is true, I don't know. It's still no excuse for sleeping with the guy. If again, according to her, she thought that he cared about her. But on the Sandoval side of it, which we haven't heard really, is why would you go to all that trouble if you didn't really care about the person? That's kind of shady. So we don't know what's on his side, her side, but she was really into this guy, and they ended up communicating with each other after the reunion, because on tonight's Vanderpump Rules, that's when they mentioned that a postcard came through with the lightning bolts and packages were being sent back and forth, and that Ariana said that her and Tom are coexisting in the same house, but his manager is the one that texts Ariana, or Ariana texts her and gets things taken care of, and they try not to see each other in the same house and try to coordinate when they're doing other things. Now, during this taping of this first episode of Vanderpump Rules, Tom was overseas recording some sort of military show. I don't even know what show it is. I think it might have aired already, but I'm not sure. And of course, Ariana is still really upset about the whole thing. She was asked to go to James's DJing event at Tom Tom, and she hadn't been to Tom Tom in a really long time, and it brought back all kinds of memories for her to be there. Now, let's talk about James for a quick second. It looks like he might be the main guy, and I've heard this, that they may make him the main guy this season. So they showed him and Allie. He's in a new home. They're right over the path, though, of the airport. So they kept having planes that kept going by. and they showed his new house. Then he had lunch with Tom Schwartz, and, he's like, and Tom was like, I'm really excited. I'm really happy that you are being friends with me. He goes, I really went through a really tough time. And, they seemed to bond a little bit. And so Tom has at least somebody on his side. He's sort of getting along with his ex, Katie. They still share the dogs. She doesn't really want to do anything with him. He has said, hey, do you want to stay for a little bit? And she's like, fine. And she didn't want to be there. Now, going back to Lala, all the girls at that Tom Tom event, Lala was there, and she went and had a conversation with Lisa Vanderpump on the side and said, I was the girl on the other end of a cheating scandal. I was the other woman. People were calling me names. People were saying really nasty things about me. So in that situation, now that everything's happened, and, with the reunion and everything and how it was really, really hard for her, I kind of empathize with her in that way. So she went outside and she made a phone call, or I don't know if it was an actual phone call or if it was one of those audio texts. It looked like it might have been an audio text. And she said, I don't know if you're getting your messages, but if you get this message, I would love to have a conversation with you. And then we found out tonight on What Happens Live that phone call was never returned. So Raquel never turned it at all. Was there a chance for her to go back on the show and possibly have things work out in her favor? Yes. Yes, I do. Now, it's not for me to say whether I think her mental health could have handled it or not handled it, but she chose not to go back on the show. She said that it would have hurt her mental health. She's trying to get out of her history of picking the bad relationships. She came right off of James, who at that time had an alcohol problem. Right now, so far this season, he is not drinking any alcohol. He's smoking pot, but he's not drinking alcohol. And his current girlfriend, says she likes him better when he is not drinking. And he said he decided to not drink because of her. So, but Raquel had a rough time with that relationship. And then she ended up in this other really toxic relationship by being with a man who hadn't officially broken up with his girlfriend and created the mess. If they had broken up ahead of time, it still would have been weird in the same friend group, but at least she would have been cheating on her friend's boyfriend. Although in the podcast, she says that her and Ariana weren't really close friends. They were more acquaintances and mostly for the show. Although it did not look like that on camera. So you've got to figure out, not that Raquel's lying at all, but everyone's got their own version of things. So it was really interesting listening to the podcast and then seeing tonight's episode and then also listening to what happens live. Most of the questions were all like quizzes and stuff. So they didn't really get into a whole lot. I guess they don't really want to give a lot away. They showed some upcoming things. There's going to be some explosions. There always is. So we'll have to see where the season takes us. But it'll also be interesting to see what other sort of background Raquel continues to give on her podcast. So did you watch tonight's episode? What do you think? Is anyone listening to this podcast? Again, it is on it's iHeartRadio iHeartMedia that is producing it. So I listen to it on Spotify. It's probably on some of the other forums like Apple. It's probably on Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your podcasts. But are you listening to the podcast? And yeah, leave your comments below. I love reading them. All right, well, I will be making another video tomorrow about The Bachelor because I did watch that also, but I was super busy today and was only able to make one, and I really was into Vanderpump Rules, so I decided to make this one first. On that note, thank you for tuning into the Chatty TV Junkie. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, give me a big thumbs up, hit the bell notification so you know when I upload, and I'll see you very soon. Good night.